Yesterday, we looked at the Mariners' arbitration projections and told you who could get tendered and non-tendered. Today, we're going to do the same thing, but with the rest of the league. That and more coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Thursday, October 3rd, 2024. This is Tony Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we're going to look at MLBTradeRumors.com's arbitration projections and see if there are any non-tender candidates around the league who could land on the Mariners' radar. We'll also talk about the Dodgers as a potential match in a Luis Castillo trade. And finally, it looks like the Astros might be in a bit of a payroll crunch. How does that impact the AL West outlook this offseason? And could there be any opportunities there for the Mariners? Before we get into all that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Booking.com. Yeah, the right state can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can sign up for a free 7-day trial. So, not only did MLBTradeRumors.com release arbitration projections for the Mariners, like we talked about all on yesterday's episode, they released them, of course, for every other team in Major League Baseball. So, let's go around the league here, Colby, and look at some players that might get non-tendered, that might actually be of interest to the Mariners, or just in general. Who catches your eye in terms of guys that might get non-tendered by their teams?
Yeah, some of these guys are obvious non-tenders. Other ones are maybe not types. I don't know how many of these guys fit the Mariners all that well, because obviously they're being non-tendered probably means they're not coming off of a great season. Their team feels that they are expendable. And so typically that's not the type of player you want to target this winter, but there are some potential role players in here that could be nice. There are some familiar names in here that I would say reunion's unlikely for two of them, but one of them certainly very likely to have a reunion. So, just scrolling through the list, there are others. These aren't the only ones. These are just the ones that on very first glance, I wrote them down as like, oh, okay, that guy's getting non-tendered. That guy's probably getting non-tendered. That guy might be. So their value to the Mariners or their fit with the Mariners wasn't really, on my mind when I made this list. But a couple guys, some names here. Trent Grisham from the Yankees, probably getting non-tendered. Andrew Vaughn from the White Sox, once heralded rookie first baseman. He might get non-tendered. Nicky Lopez, the second baseman, is going to get non-tendered. Cal Quantrill, number 5 starter for, I believe, the Rockies. Now the Rockies,
I have reasons to love him that I can't say on this show.
Right. But also the Rockies are pretty stupid. So maybe they look at, Emerson Hancock and think he's worth $9 million. So maybe that's a possibility. Old friend Ty France, almost certainly getting non-tendered as well. I can't see the Reds giving him $8-9 million based on what he did last year for them.
No, you and I were just talking about this before we hit record. I thought France was a lot better in his Reds tenure than he actually was. /251, 292, 391. That's an 82 WRC plus. He was basically the guy he was with the Mariners.
Santiago Espinal, former Blue Jay, utility type there. Brian De La Cruz was dreadful for the Pirates. And as we know, the Pirates not ones to spend a ton of money. So they're probably not going to take a shot on him rebounding. So Brian De La Cruz could be non-tendered here. Former Baltimore Oriole Jorge Mateo certainly brings a lot of speed to the table, and obviously some pretty good defense as well. But the Orioles don't spend a ton of money, although they're vowing to spend more this winter. But either way,
well, they have new ownership, so we can't really base anything off of how they've operated in the past yet.
Right. Either way, Mateo getting expensive last year of arbitration, and the Orioles infield depth they probably feel pretty good about. So he's probably getting non-tendered if they can't find a trade. He's interested in it because he runs really well. He can play multiple infield spots. Just you can't steal first base, right? Is kind of the whole shtick there. So maybe. Also from the Orioles, Trevor Rogers was a disaster. The fact that they gave up Connor Norby to get him doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that it's a sunk cost at this point, right? Like he's that terrible for him. Bringing him back and paying him money just to be like, we didn't waste Connor Norby is dumb. It's not what good teams do. You just cut your losses and you move on. So Rogers is an interesting guy. Has some great years in the big leagues, but has really struggled to stay healthy and produce the last few years. Tyrone Taylor, kind of a fourth outfield platoon type. An interesting guy, Ramon Laureano from the Guardians. They're not paying him $5-6 million. That's not going to happen.
He's on the Braves now.
Yeah, sorry. It was with the Guardians. They're not going to pay him that, though. He's a fourth outfielder. His purpose was served because Acuna will be back next year, and they had to kind of rebuild their outfield on the fly again. So, yeah, he'll be out there. And then two names that are pretty funny. One of them is not going to happen. I think we could safely say like it's not going to happen. No. One of them I feel like not only could happen, but probably should happen. So these two names, both former Mariners. We'll start with the one that I think probably should happen. How about Eric Swanson? You want to take a shot on Eric Swanson coming back?
Why not?
Dreadful this year, right? Obviously, he had some tragedy off the field that he had to deal with. But Swanson, Mariners know him very well. He had some great years with Seattle. He's probably going to be pretty cheap, either via trade or as a non-tender candidate. I would love to get Eric Swanson on a low.
And it's one blow up year after 3 really good years.
Yeah.
So.
Right. And so, again, Toronto might tender him, but I feel like they're going to move on from Swanson. And I think that if the Mariners come calling, hey, do you want, $1.2 million and then with incentives that, easily, like I would rather take a shot on Swanson at like 1 million plus incentives than I would pay Trent Thornton the $2 million that he's going to take a shot on, that he's going to demand in arbitration. So we'll see if Swanson hits free agency. I'm very interested in that as a lottery ticket. Another guy probably going to get tendered. Probably.
Maybe.
But maybe not. It's not a sure thing. And when I saw the name on the list and I saw the number attached to him, I was like, he's not worth that. So maybe.
What is the number?
It's about $2 million.
Wow.
Mr. Jared Kelenic could be in danger of getting non-tendered. He was dreadful last year.
He was even worse in a Braves uniform than he was in 2023 with the Mariners.
Yep. All the same problems were still there. So the whole, it's a better ballpark for me to hit in. The whole, it's a change of scenery. Oh, I got to get out of there. It's a disaster. Yeah, it turns out, Jared Kelenic remains for now at 25 years old. The guy with $1 million tool set and a 10-cent head because he still struck out. He still was very streaky. His defense actually declined. His base running skills actually declined. And he had a 3-week stretch where he was really good. And the rest of the year, he was terrible.
Yeah, he had a great first week of the season, and then he was bad from that point forward. And then they put him in the leadoff spot after Acuna got hurt.
Yep.
And he was really good for like a couple weeks, and then fell off the face of the earth again. Sounds like Jared Kelenic to me. Oh, and by the way, over the course of that time, he changed his setup like 6 billion times.
Mm-hmm. Basically, Jared Kelenic, the player, is Dominic Canzone. Same dude. Can get hot, average to slightly above average corner defense. Fast, but not much of a base stealer.
Yeah.
Tremendous pull power.
And he's 25 years old now. So we're getting past the point of like, he's still young. He's still figuring it out. Like, this might just be who Jared Kelenic is.
Talking about parts of 4 full seasons in the big leagues. Like, Jared Kelenic is a non-tender candidate. Now, at $2 million, Braves probably figured they could trade him. Like, if you're a team like, I don't know, Pittsburgh, like maybe if you're a team like Oakland, maybe you take a shot at that price. But Kelenic is certainly no guarantee to get tendered, despite his once promising, prospect status. But yeah, I don't foresee the Mariners getting involved there. For one thing, the Mariners already have 5 outfielders better
Right.
than Jared Kelenic, and they part of the reason they were willing to trade Jared Kelenic the way they did. Our understanding is that they felt that the act had kind of worn thin in that clubhouse.
Oh, they were going to trade him no matter what.
Right. So
yeah.
Kelnic's not coming back. But I did read his name, and A, I was a little bit surprised that he was already arbitration eligible. But B, I was like, that's not a guarantee. He might be out there. So yeah, we'll see if somebody takes a shot on him. Maybe the Braves take a shot on him. He's got to be close to running out of options, I would imagine as well. So yeah, Jared Kelenic running out of time. Not much of a fit for Seattle, but Eric Swanson, I like that fit a lot.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So we'll put a bow on this and talk about a couple of the other guys and maybe if they potentially fit the Mariners. And then we'll also talk about Luis Castillo. Could he be a fit for the Los Angeles Dodgers? All that coming up in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you once again by Booking.com. Explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. With hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Even an Orioles fan or a Guardians fan can have a good time in New York no matter what happens on the diamond this October. You can drown your playoff woes with a New York slice or celebrate advancing to the next round with a delicious chopped cheese, all while taking in the autumn vibes in Manhattan and capping it all off with a great stay in the city. Booking.com delivers exactly the right U.S. stay for you, and the right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, booking.yeah. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Tomorrow is Fan Fiction Friday, folks. It is back. It is making its triumphant return for the 2024-25 offseason. We have already put the tweet out looking for your trade ideas. So head on over to LO_Mariners on Twitter and reply to the tweet with your Mariners trade idea. We might just react to it on tomorrow's show. So just talked about Eric Swanson as a guy that we would be interested in. The Mariners bring him back if he is non-tendered. You listed a couple of other guys that are pretty interesting. I want to start with Jorge Mateo. Because, again, like you said, you can't steal first base. But, man, when this guy does get on base, he is electric. And he also plays pretty good defense at a couple of infield spots. So what kind of has to happen roster-wise in order for you to be interested in Jorge Mateo?
I'm not.
You're not? No?
To me, he's basically Dylan Moore with none of the offensive upside of Dylan Moore.
Sure.
Because, I mean, Dylan Moore, while he's certainly not perfect by any stretch, and he strikes out a ton, he can, help carry an offense for a couple weeks at a time. He does have the power. And, we remember, what was it, May Dylan Moore, where for about a month, he was your best hitter. And he does that pretty much once a year. Now, it's not always a month. Sometimes it's only a week. But, if we're talking about a guy who can play in multiple spots with above average infield defense, a guy who can steal bases, create havoc off the bench, I already have Dylan Moore. Right. So I guess if you trade Dylan Moore and now you're kind of looking at it, I would still probably honestly rather go with Ryan Bliss, but Bliss, you don't really want to play in shortstop or third base. So he's not the ideal fit there. So yeah, I guess if you trade Dylan Moore and Mateo is coming in at less money than Dylan Moore, which is about $3 million, or right about that, then I guess it would make some sense. But short of that, I'm not really all that interested in Mateo. He's a fun player when he gets on base and puts the ball in the gap. He's got a great shot to be a triple and all that stuff, but he's a valuable player, but the Mariners have that guy.
Sure.
And I think the guy they have is just better than Mateo.
Andrew Vaughn has been a league average-ish hitter for the last 3 years. We know that the Mariners, that Jerry Dipoto loves former first-round picks. He's got some pop. Any interest there in him?
Some, but I feel like the Mariners already have this guy in their system too, and his name is Tyler Locklear, pretty much the same profile. Now Vaughn has more of a track record, certainly, in the majors. So obviously it's not
19 homers this year, 21 the year before. Like he can, at the very least, he can give you 15 to 20 home runs. Like you feel pretty good about counting on that.
Sure.
But that might be the only thing that he brings to the table that you can count on.
Right. So yeah, I mean, like the strikeouts aren't ridiculous by like Mariner standards. So it's not like he's a big swing and miss guy. But again, you're getting below average power from the first base spot. It's really the only position he should play is first base. And he just hasn't hit. And again, he's hitting in Chicago for half of his games. That's a good hitter's ballpark. And he's just not really producing the 297 on base this year, career 310 guy. Like he's fine. He's probably about a league average bat. But you're talking about a first baseman. You need more than league average from your first baseman, and he's not better than Rayleigh. So I guess if what makes Vaughn interesting is that maybe he's a tweak guy. Maybe there's something in his swing, something in his setup where you tweak it, right? And maybe it's an approach or something. You tweak it and you get him thinking right, and all of a sudden he's hitting 30 home runs because he had that type of pop in college. Like that's what he was built to be. He was going to be, a slugging first baseman. He just really hasn't been. He's been fine. But again, you're getting no defensive value. You're getting no base running value from him. So to me, if the best you could do is 20 home runs, like at least with Luke Rayleigh, who might only hit 20 home runs, he's doing that again, as a platoon guy and 450 plate appearances, he's doing that versus Vaughn, who's getting 600 plate appearances and only hitting 20. And with Rayleigh, I get some speed and I get some athleticism out of it. So Vaughn, I'm not like super interested in it, but like if Edgar Martinez says, hey, I think if we do this, like we can unlock something here, then I'm willing to give it a shot. Like he's a guy I take a shot on, sure. Just at like $6-7 million. No, I wouldn't. And so I feel, again, Vaughn to me feels like an Oakland A kind of like that. That's the type of guy that they take a shot on. But I'd be intrigued because if the Mariners bring him in, I'm gonna look at it and be like, okay, like maybe he could be just that classic change of scenery, which leads to a change in approach or change in swing or whatever from really unlocking something. So I'm intrigued, but I'm not overly enthused. Like I'm not making an effort to go get that guy.
So switching gears here, let's talk a little bit about Luis Castillo. Obviously, we've talked a lot about the possibility of trading him. Jerry DiPoto did say that trading one of the starting pitchers is plan Z, but obviously you got a guy here that's making $24.1 million each of the next few years. He's still really good, so there should be a lot of interest in him. And there's a possibility here where you can get at least some of that contract off of your books and actually get something nice in return for him, because again, he's still really good. So you and I, we were on our Patreon show yesterday and we were just kind of talking, and we looked at the Dodgers. It's like, well, Clayton Kershaw is probably going to retire, and if he doesn't, he's still a free agent. Walker Buehler is going to be a free agent. Jack Flaherty is going to be a free agent. All of their starting pitchers, it seems, have gotten hurt. They're going to get Ohtani back next year on the mound. They're, presumably going to have a healthy Tyler Glass now and a healthy Yoshinobu Yamamoto. But after those three guys, I mean, Bobby Miller's coming off of a terrible year. And then you start getting into guys like Gavin Stone and Landon Neck, etc. I think they're going to be pretty active in terms of trying to add veteran starting pitching. And it could be as simple as, they're just going to go out into free agency and they're going to give Corbin Burns a big deal, or they're going to give Garrett Cole a big deal if he opts out of his contract, whatever, right? They might just do that, or they'll get one of the mid-tier guys, or they'll just re-sign Jack Flaherty, whatever. But maybe they want to look at Luis Castillo. So this is just a very quick mention of that, just to kind of just put that in your guys' brains. Maybe just file that away for later on this off season. But Colby, what do you think about the how maybe these two teams line up on a potential Castillo trade?
Yeah. So before last off season, where the Dodgers went crazy, their MO had been to not spend huge in free agency and to rather build via trade. Now, that's not to say they didn't spend any money in free agency. Obviously they did before last year, but Freddie
I mean, Freddie Freeman's getting $27 million a year. That's a pretty big contract.
Right. But it's not elite, right? It's not Garrett Cole money. It's not probably Corbin Burns money.
It's not in the 30 million AAV plus.
Right. It's not 200 million, $300 million. Now, again, they did it with Ohtani. They did it with Yamamoto. Very clearly, this Dodgers ownership group is getting ready to sell the Dodgers to somebody else, probably in the next 10 years before that, for all that deferred money kicks in. We're going to see them sell. So the way they operated in the past may not be the way they operate going forward. But in the past, the Dodgers have preferred the trade route to the free agent route. They develop really well. We know that they're very good at drafting and developing. They're right up there with the Mariners, but been a little bit of a slower churn these last few years. The Dodgers, steam engine is slowing down a bit in terms of the drafting and developing, but whatever, they're still very good at it.
Yeah.
I think the reason Castillo would be so appealing to the Dodgers is that you listed Ohtani. Okay. But he's coming back from a second elbow injury. You mentioned Yamamoto. He missed a large chunk of this time. And again, the Japanese schedule is a lot different than the American schedule. Glass now seemingly misses huge chunks of the year every single year. So even with those three guys, you probably have some kind of innings cap or some kind of limitation that you're going to impose on those guys. And the Dodgers have not had a starting pitcher throw more than 141 innings in either of the last 2 years. That is a lot of innings that need to be covered by AAA call-ups, by your bullpen, by long relief types. And the Dodgers have made it work. Of course they have. They found a way to make it work. Money can make a lot of, unfortunate situations work, and development can do the same thing. But at some point, right, you need availability. You need a guy who's going to go out there and give you 180, 200 innings. You can only, run this, and I think this year they only had, if I'm remembering correctly, they had one pitcher in the entire staff go over 100 innings this year. So they need a starter who can eat innings, but it can't just be, Jordan Lyles, right? You're the Dodgers. You can't go out there and try and fix this with a Chad's inning eater, right? You have to go out there and get somebody who's durable, but also performs at a high level. And that is a guy like Luis Castillo. Would Luis Castillo waive his no trade to the Dodgers? I mean, I don't know, but seemingly he'd probably be one of the teams that he would. It's a great market, great opportunity to win, and they're really good at
surefire championship contender. So
right. So yeah, we don't know for sure. Maybe Castillo has no interest in waiving the no trade clause at all. But if he is willing to waive it, the Dodgers seem like one of the teams that he would probably heavily consider doing it for. And as for the Dodgers have enough to, compensate the Mariners fairly? Yes. Are the Dodgers going to be willing to eat most, if not all of that salary in order to accomplish it and still give the Mariners a really great return? Yeah, of course they are. They're the Dodgers. So yeah, the Dodgers make a ton of sense. You can go kind of like top shelf and just go get like a Dalton Rushing type to headline, and then you get some other stuff to fill in. Maybe you go get a couple of major league guys like Andy Pajes and Gavin Lux, both guys who, flash, but haven't really put it all together. Sure. And so maybe you just go get a couple of those guys. Remember, the Dodgers always have a 40-man crunch, always.
You can always get a third team involved.
Right. So, yes, the Dodgers make sense for Luis Castillo. Yes, I think Castillo would consider waiving his no-trade clause. And I think it's the combination of both ability to post or availability of Castillo and the fact that he is a high performer still with, pretty good track record in the playoffs, which is obviously going to be important to the Dodgers. I think that makes Castillo appealing more so than, obviously I think plan A is for them to go give Burns a ton of money, whatever. But it's probably more appealing to go trade for Castillo than give, $20 million a year to whoever this year's Jamison Tyone is, whoever this year's Taijuan Walker is. Because Castillo is clearly better than those guys, and he's not that much more expensive. So yeah, I do think the Dodgers and Castillo, there's a good fit there. Again, do I think the Mariners are likely trading Castillo this winter? No. But if you told me they were going to trade him, I would list the Dodgers very high on my list of probable teams.
Yep. The Orioles are another team to potentially keep an eye on because they might lose Corbin Burns.
Sure. I would have the Dodgers ahead of the Orioles in terms of likeliness to trade, though.
Yeah.
Maybe Philadelphia also.
Mm-hmm. Potentially. All right. So The Astros apparently might be in a bit of a payroll crunch. So we're going to talk about that, how that might impact things in the AL West this offseason, and if there are any opportunities for the Mariners to potentially take advantage of that, despite being, in a payroll crunch of their own, unfortunately. Go over that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel and PrizePicks. NFL fans can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets. Yeah, you heard that right. $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. So let's talk about what just came out about a couple of hours ago from MLB trade rumors. The Astros apparently might be heading for a payroll crunch this winter. Their GM, Dana Brown, said, I think we're going to have to make some wise decisions as to, are there younger players that we can call up and put in certain roles to maybe save some money here and there, allocate that money to other places. We may have to get a little bit creative. So, of course, they got Framber Valdez and Kyle Tucker, who are getting more expensive via arbitration. They potentially are going to lose Alex Bregman this offseason to free agency. He already tweeted out, thank you, Houston, and they gave him that standing ovation against the Mariners about a week ago and all that. So it's possible there are some significant changes coming for the Mariners' biggest division rival this winter. So how do you think this potentially impacts things and just in the division heading into this offseason? What do you think the Astros are going to wind up doing this offseason? Is Bregman coming back? Are they going to have to trade a Framber Valdez or someone like that? And is there anyone on that roster you think the Mariners might be interested in?
It seems to me like the easiest thing to look at here is to say, like, Bregman, probably not coming back. But obviously you start to look around and say, okay, well, they might have to get creative. Okay, who do they have to trade? You kind of look at who's under contract for next year and how much money they're making. They're not trading Altuve. Yep. They can't trade Hader. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine they're going to get many looks at Lance McCullers, who also has a limited no trade, by the way, since he didn't pitch this year. Obviously, they're not trading Yordan. They could try and trade Ryan Presley, who had an option activate.
I think they can also just buy him out for $2 million. If I'm not mistaken.
It's his option activated fully.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if that still comes with a buyout, but it basically went from a club option to either a player option, or it went to it was just an incentive based option that clicked in. That's at $14 million. Yeah. Good luck finding somebody to take $14 million from Ryan Presley. They're not going to trade Christian Javier. Maybe they get somebody to take Carantini at $6 million. And then you have a bunch of guys heading into ARB. So
so Framber Valdez is projected to make $17.8 million. Yeah. Kyle Tucker, $15.8 million. Those are the two big ones. And then the rest of the guys are making like 4, 3, 2,
Right. So we don't know what the payroll restrictions are going to be. What's going to is it just like they can't go above what they were this year, which probably eliminates Bregman? I don't see them trading Framber. Tucker, maybe, but it's not going to be to Seattle. So if you're a Kyle Tucker to the Mariners, that's your thing. You have to wait another year.
Sorry,
Yeah.
TJ.
Yeah, not going to happen. Not this year.
Yeah.
And honestly, probably not next year because he'll probably need $300 million to sign him.
Yeah.
27 is the new 38, according to John Stanton. So that's not going to happen. Urquidy could be interesting. He's, a nice arm, but he is kind of a number 5 limited type.
Yep.
I wonder if maybe Mauricio Dubon is a guy who, has got some utility, can play center field, can play second base. Okay player. $4.6 million. Might be able to shave a little there, but again, if you're having to take drastic cuts right off of your payroll, I don't think $4 million here, $3 million here is going to do it. So it's a little bit of a tough situation. Like if I could get Brian Abreu at $3.7 million, like that's a guy I would be interested in as the Mariners.
Yeah.
Even to less Chas McCormick, I still like him, even though he's a dirty, filthy cheater. Tried to break Ty France's elbow. But that would be an interesting fit. Old friend Penn Murphy, super too. Yeah. But no, I don't see a ton of like players on this roster who make a ton of sense for the Mariners based on the amount of money they're going to make. And again, when you start eliminating guys like Altuve, it kind of gets a little tough. Now, keep in mind here that the Astros' current payroll for 2026 or 2025 entering the offseason is going to be $146 million. These are before all the ARB guys are added. So it's not like they're right up against it already. It's not like they're already at $200 million.
No.
But again, without having like a rough number estimate, like I don't think starting at 146 is going to make them try and trade for Amber and Kyle Tucker, who are going to be making about 33. So that would push them up to about 180, give or take. So in theory, they could still sign Bregman and be at about 210 million, give or take. And then the rest of these ARB guys, you kind of quick math here, 8, 10, 16, 20, about 23, $24 million. That would take them up to about 230, right? If they tendered everybody in the ARB.
So they started last year at 235 and then they finished the year at 244. Must be nice.
Right.
But,
so if the goal is to be, or if the mandate is to be lower payroll than last year, they could theoretically tender everybody.
Yeah.
And be right at about where they were once they add in all the minimum salary guys.
Yeah.
So,
but this is obviously a team that really struggled in the first half. They got incredibly hot in the second half, and then they get bounced on the wild card round. They get swept.
This is a team that needs to add. They have holes in first base. They have holes in the outfield. They have holes in the rotation. They have some holes in the bullpen. And they're not going to have a ton of money to do it. So maybe they do trade for Amber. Maybe they do trade Kyle Tucker, but I can guarantee you this much. They're not trading him to the Seattle Mariners. The Astros might be willing to trade with the Mariners, but they are not giving one of their stars.
No, they might trade Brian Abreu to the Mariners.
Sure. They might trade Chas McCormick or Jake Myers to the Mariners. They might trade Ryan Presley to the Mariners, but they are not trading Jose Altuve and Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez or even Jeremy Pena. Like those guys are not going to be Seattle Mariners. It specifically relating to the Mariners, is there anything here Seattle could take advantage of? Not really. Not really. It's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Maybe one or two guys, but role players or bullpen arms at best.
Crazy thought here. Maybe
I reject it immediately.
It's Astros related. Maybe no, you'll agree with this. Okay. Maybe don't give a reliever $19 million a year if you know that you're heading for a payroll crunch, and that you might have to pay your superstar corner outfielder, and maybe your franchise legend third baseman. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one guy that the Astros will pay no matter what is Jose Altuve. It feels like they're willing to let all their other stars walk when the time comes. They let Cole walk. They let Verlander walk. They, they're going to let Bregman walk. They let Correa walk. Sure seems like they're heading towards letting Tucker walk. But Altuve, they'll continue to pay. Probably more than he's worth at this stage of his career. But yeah, interesting that Altuve is kind of the guy that they've decided to stick behind for their entire run.
I mean, the structure of that deal is really team friendly, though. So
yeah, it's a high AAV, but I'm not sure what the deferred money or any of that stuff is. I haven't looked too closely at it, but yeah, Altuve is also taken some discounts along the way. So I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, Correa's gone. They let Cole walk. They let Verlander walk. They're probably letting Bregman walk, right? Like just the core of that group, and then kind of the revamp of it, mostly all gone now. It's pretty much Tucker and Altuve and Framber. And the way that things are setting up right now, Tucker and Framber might be heading out the door, and Bregman here in the next 2 years. So we'll see. The Astros will pull something out of their, and find a 4-win pitcher from somewhere deep in their system, because that's what they do. But can they replace, Bregman? I mean, I don't know. You guys saw Shea Whitcomb, right?
Yeah. But also when, Carlos Correa left, we were like, oh, wow, they got so much worse at shortstop. And then here comes Jeremy Pena out of nowhere.
Jeremy Pena, who's only a superstar when he plays the Mariners.
So that's going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Tidy Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Tidy Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.